Yo, happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to our Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel Friday predictions brought to you by Prize Picks. They will 100% deposit match when you sign up. Use the user code Orange Bloods. They'll match up to $100 of your initial deposit. 100%. Prize Picks is our partner on our Friday prediction show all season long, and I have to admit, last week I had a lot of fun taking advantage of the Prize Picks money that we have to play with on a monthly basis. They've been good enough to give us some, and I, Jason, almost lost all of my Prize Picks money last week. Nothing that I said was going to happen actually happened, which makes me a little weary of what we're going to talk about today with what we think are the top three entries to pay attention to.
Do the opposite of whatever Ketchum does, huh?
Yes, no, exactly. Exactly. Before we get into the entries that intrigue us the most this week on Prize Picks, let's get into our Texas and Alabama predictions. I've got mine in my head. Is anybody else teed up and ready to go, or I'll go first if you need me to?
I've got my number.
Right. Go for it, Jason.
Yeah, last week I had Texas. I predicted, I'm looking down, I had them 54-13 is what I predicted the outcome for Texas to be. This week, I'm sticking with 54 catch. I think Bama's going to put up points. I think we all probably think that. I haven't heard y'all's predictions yet, so I don't know. But I think we all feel probably that Bama's going to put up points. I mean, this is a loaded Bama offense. It's a Texas defense that played much, much better last week than we had seen last season. But, hey, man, they're going to have to do it more than against Louisiana and Monroe to prove to me that defense is back and is ready to slow down a team like Alabama. I think Alabama's going to put up points. It's 54. I've got Texas. This is not going to make me any friends with the Longhorn fans watching this, but I've got 54-24. I just think Bama is too explosive for Texas to keep up with them. Can I see a scenario? I kind of said this on the modcast where Quinn Ewers gets hot and maybe it's a lot closer than that. I can see that, but I'm not expecting it. So I'm going Alabama 54, Texas 24.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Will not make you popular. It makes me feel better about my pick a little bit. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's no need to beat around the bush. I think that Alabama is the better football team. And I think it's going to take a monumental effort from Texas to win. I talked about it, like Jason, circling back to the podcast. I talked about it there. It's going to take taking advantage of every opportunity. And look, this prediction probably won't sound the best. My view is that Texas can absolutely win. I mean, any given Saturday, right? I mean, Texas can win, but I think it's going to need everything to go its way. And that's a tall order for a team with so many young starters, especially at the quarterback position. So I'm going Alabama 47, Texas 24.
Interesting. I'm not too far away from you guys. I've got Alabama in this game clearing the projections from all of the Vegas sites. I think that God, I haven't even looked never mind. I'm just in my head for a little bit. I think this is going to be a 48-27 type game. I think it's going to be a game for 15 or 20 minutes. And then I think about that scene in Saving Private Ryan when the little guy is fighting the big German. And then eventually, there's just only so much you can do when the big guy's on top of you, choking the life out of you. You can
get a
swing
knife plunged
and
into your heart. Yeah.
You can squirm. You can give your best effort. And sometimes better is just better. And I think over the course of 4 quarters, Alabama will separate from Texas. But I think it will be a compelling, fun game for a few quarters. And then I think Alabama will flex its muscle and we'll learn that Texas is still we'll learn something that we already know, which is Texas is an evolving football team with a young quarterback, a young offensive lineman. They're still trying to figure it out. And it's hard for me to believe that all of those things at the same time figure it out against the number 1 team in the country, even if it's at home. So I got 48-27, 21-point margin of victory. but we're all kind of in the same area. We think Alabama's going to score a lot, and we think Texas is probably somewhere in the 20s, not enough to get it done. Now, let's talk about some of the projected entries that Prize Picks has going this week. We've picked 3 of them from 3 different players, and all of them are really interesting to me because I have like a gut reaction of what I think the answer is going to be, which means I'm 100% going to be wrong based on last week. Let's start with the Quinn Ewers rushing yards entry. Put that back up again if you can, Blake. It's minus 9.5 rushing yards. Obviously, at the collegiate level, they include sacks. So, Alex, I thought Ewers was reluctant to run last week. That, he's a guy that when he scrambles to throw. That was, I think, the book on Bryce Young up until last weekend when he scrambled to run and had 100 yards. I guess the question for this particular entry is, how many times do you think Alabama's able to get Quinn Ewers on the ground? Because to me, I think more than minus 9.5 is probably the smart play.
More meaning closer to 0 and positive?
I guess it would be less, right?
Yeah, it'd be this entry is less. And the reason why is, Quinn Ewers, if you look at the stats from last week, he had minus 9 yards last week rushing because of this. You think it's not going to get any easier versus Alabama at all. I'm with Catch. I think that even if he were predisposed to run, he's athletic, dude. He's big. He's a good-looking kid. But even if he were predisposed to run, I guess what I should say, I keep stepping over myself here. I feel like even though he is a guy who's a little bit predisposed to run, I feel like that thing's been that whole predisposition has been just knocked out of his head by Sark. He doesn't want him to. He wants to use his mobility to, be able to escape the pocket, to be able to create some time for himself, and to be able to throw the football downfield. So I'm not expecting a big rushing game out of Quinn Ewers. I think that he's going to get sacked more in this game than he was versus ULM for sure. And if they're just telling me it's like the baseline is ULM last week, it's going to be more or less than that. It's going to be less. He's going to lose more yards this week versus Alabama.
Jason, the tricky thing about this particular entry is that all it takes is like one 15-yard run one time, and it throws the whole thing off kilter a little bit. So would you take the less and have him 9.5 or worse? Or do you think there's one scramble in Quinn Ewers this week that could completely throw this one off its axis?
Yeah, it's a small sample size, but I do agree with Alex. It almost seems like they've maybe encouraged him to not run, and maybe they're just trying to protect him, make him not take hits or something. Against Alabama, hey, man, you do whatever you've got to do. If you see an opening, take off and run with it. We know he's capable of that, but when I see that entry of negative 9.5, I believe, right? Is it 9 or 9?
Yes.
9.5. That makes me think that Prize Picks is projecting that he is going to get sacked a few times, and I tend to agree with them. So my answer to that would be my entry would be less than 9.5 rushing yards for Quinn Ewers, meaning I think he's going to have negative 10 or fewer rushing yards.
It's interesting. I don't think I've ever made any kind of projection on negative yards in a game. It's never.
I feel like I'm talking like 2 negatives make a positive. I've
got Alex correcting me because I said more, but I really meant less. And when you start getting into the negative numbers, it gets a little tricky there. Entry number 2 on the Prize Picks that we think is worth taking a strong look at. Bijan Robinson, 107.5 combined rushing or receiving yards. Man, I don't know about the rest of you. I'm more on that. I don't know that he's hitting 175, but 107.5, like I on Prize Picks this weekend.
Well, here's the thing, Catch. He's going to get to play the full game. And I know like it won't be like last week where he gets taken, 57 plays, he gets taken out after 32 of them or what. He's playing the whole game. And I don't know what he had last week. He had like 78 on the ground. He had 40-something through the air. And now clearly that's versus ULM. But that's also in a game where it's like they're doing stuff where they're mixing in other guys. They're getting, making sure they're getting Roschel on the ball. They're making sure they're getting Keelan Robinson there for 5 snaps in these 2 running back sets. Like, I think with this, the focus is going to be Bijan Robinson. And the fact that this is a rushing plus receiving entry, to me, it's just like that takes the whole game script out of it. It's like, so, all right, so you say, well, what if Texas gets down, 21 points early? How are they going to just pound Bijan? Well, they're not, but they're going to throw the football to him. So that trap door there of the rushing plus receiving just makes it easy for me to say more because, if Texas has any hope of winning this game, they need Bijan to have a big game, and I think the coaches know that. So even if they don't win the game, and even if that is not even if it's not a true statement that Bijan needs to have a big game for Texas to win the game, I believe the coaches believe that. And so I believe that he's going to get the volume.
Well, we talked about it in the modcast, Jason. He's the best player, right? I can't remember who brought it up in the chat.
It was one of the people in the chat. They said, well, if Will Anderson's the best in the nation
and Bryce Young is the best in the nation,
right,
then Bijan's the best in the nation. And this is the kind of game where you need him. If he's as talented as we think he is, this is where you'd like to see him flex it a little bit, Jason. I think this one, I'm much more favorable in getting some action in on this one. I almost certainly will have this in my picks this weekend for sure.
Yeah.
My projections on the more or less, this is where I'll be going.
My entry would be on Moore as well. Listen, we've said it, all 3 of us have said it repeatedly. Bijan has to be really good for Texas to win this game. The Texas coaches know that. Bijan knows it. Bijan's a very prideful guy. I think he gives maximum effort every single game, but I can see this week where he might have even a little extra juice running through his veins. So my entry would be on Moore on Bijan's total yardage there.
All right, and the last one that we're going to look at today, and I like this one too, which means I feel so bad. I feel like I'm jinxing everybody here. Xavier Worthy, more or less on 4 receptions. And if I'm not mistaken,
he's going to get double that.
You don't get punished on Prize Picks if you include him and he gets exactly 4.
Right, it pushes.
So, you're protected in that event.
What it does is takes down the number of the multi-entry. It takes the multi-entry number down, I think.
It waters it down a little bit. Yeah. Jason, this is one where they didn't get him the ball that much last week, but they also didn't run those little end-around pop plays where it's technically a passing play, but it's really just tossing it to him, right behind the line of scrimmage and letting him run. I have to believe they do that at least a couple of times this weekend. Maybe it's a sucker bet. Maybe I'm completely off. But if we're talking about more or less 4 receptions for Xavier Worthy, we're not getting into yards. We're just talking about receptions. I think I'm taking the more.
Absolutely. There's 2 trains of thought. On one, Saban and his staff, they're going to do a good job of scheming to take a guy like Xavier Worthy out of the game. So that would say, okay, maybe that leans to less. But on the flip side of that, if you think Texas is going to be playing from behind, like I think us 3 do, clearly from our predictions, Texas is going to be throwing the ball a lot. So, I am absolutely on the more on Xavier Worthy having more than 4 receptions in the game against Alabama.
Alex, wrap it up. Are we on the same train?
You guys have almost said it all. This is more. It's the right play here. And for me, it has to do with everything that you guys mentioned. It has to do with the fact that that's your best receiving option. You got to go balls to the wall here. You got to get the balls to the best players. And even Sark said in his Monday press conferences, he's like, he threw around the number for getting the ball to your best player. He said 8 targets, 9 targets. That's clearly talking about Xavier Worthy. So look, if Xavier Worthy gets 9 targets, and I'll be damned if he's not coming down with more than 4 balls. So,
all of our score projections are going to be way off if Texas isn't getting the ball to Xavier Worthy in some type of meaningful way repeatedly. It can't be 1 for 79. He's going to be a guy that they're getting the ball to on a steady basis. Thanks to the guys over at Prize Picks for giving us some entries this week that were fun to talk about. I mean, it's a big game. I'll have some action in on all of those entries for sure. I'm definitely on Bijan. Of the 3, Bijan and Worthy are the 2 that stick out to me. I'll figure out what my third little combo picks section will be. But for myself, for Jason Sukumel, Alex Dunlap, and the guys over at Prize Picks, thank you for watching our Friday prediction video. Like the page, subscribe to the channel, even if you don't like the picks that we made. I feel you, but we got to be honest. Until next week, we'll do it again then. You guys take care of each other. Later.